I now invite Jeannie Brown to come forward to light the chalice and lead us in our affirmation of covenant, which is in your order of service.
I light this chalice with these words. Open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Open our minds to learn what is true. And open our hearts to love one another. Please join me in the affirmation of covenant, which you'll find printed in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine, thus do we covenant with each other.
When the Polish-Lithuanian Parliament made its declaration of religious tolerance in January of 1573, it was in the process of electing a new king. Sigismund II Augustus had died the previous summer, and as it turned out, his successor would not be elected for another 4 months. As they surveyed the world around them, roiling with violent religious conflict for more than half a century since Luther's dispute with Rome touched off the Reformation, and now engulfed in war in France and the Dutch Republic. They were determined to keep the peace at home, despite religious differences among themselves. To be sure, there were tensions, but their resolve and the example they set kept the peace in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth for another half-century. During most of that half-century, however, they were at odds with an elected king who sought absolute power. 14 years after their declaration, they elected Sigismund III, the third king since it. Within 5 years, Sigismund also succeeded his father as King of Sweden. His mother was a Polish princess. And he set out to consolidate the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth with the Swedish-Finnish Union as a unified Catholic kingdom. He invited the Jesuit order to carry out the religious part of his plan. Swedish Protestants soon expelled him, but he and therefore Poland remained at war with Sweden for another 30 years. During this time, the Unitarian movement known as the Polish Brethren flourished. Under the protection of a Protestant nobleman who built the town of Raków for them, the Brethren established not only local churches, but an academy and press that were known and attracted students from across Europe. Perhaps because the king's attention was on the war with Sweden, the nobles in Parliament managed to stay true to their declaration of religious tolerance. But less than a decade after that war concluded, the Jesuits stepped up their efforts to expel Protestants from Poland. Our ancestors in faith, heretics who denied the doctrine of the Trinity, were their easiest targets. In 1638, they took advantage of some adolescent misbehavior, boys throwing stones at a roadside shrine near Raków, to destroy the academy and press. They said the damage was done by these heretics, not by some boys throwing stones. In 1645, on the site of the academy, the Jesuits built a Catholic sanctuary that they named the Church of the Holy Trinity. To this day, a plaque over its main door gives thanks to God for expelling this heresy from the town. We, of course, had our picture taken in front of it. Two of the Polish Brethren's buildings remain in Raków, a student dormitory from the academy and the minister's residence. The Church of the Holy Trinity towers over them, perched atop an adjacent slope. Until a few years ago, outside the residence, there was an outdoor space with wooden benches arranged in a circle, with two wooden boats arranged as a kind of sculpture. On the prow of one was the word tolerance, on the other, dialogue. Our guides from the Raków Historical Society told us that the priest one day decided enough is enough and had the area cleared. It is now simply a lawn. This same priest has forbidden the Historical Society volunteers from entering his church. Nowhere on our tour was the bitter legacy of the Counter-Reformation more palpable. And nowhere was the devotion of allies more poignant and courageous than in that little Historical Society museum up the road. There were at least 20 congregations in the area around Raków back in the 16th century. It was the center of the movement, that area. These remained vital, though the academy was destroyed. Many of their chapels still stand. The theme I noticed and felt most strongly on our pilgrimage trip to Poland was this: that allies, people curious enough about the Polish Brethren to learn their story and to admire and feel inspired by them, are most responsible for preserving their material legacy in buildings and published writings. Our tour was organized by my colleagues Jay Atkinson and Roger Jones, together with members of the Unitarian Society of the Polish Brethren in Warsaw, a very small group who told us that they were so grateful for our visit because they feel quite isolated and greatly value their international connections with other Unitarians. Their joy in connecting with allies like the Raków Historical Society was equally heartfelt. At Luslowice, on a small estate with a manor house and a Polish Brethren chapel on it, stands a memorial to Fausto Sozzini, the Italian Protestant refugee who became the Polish Brethren's intellectual leader. The estate was purchased by the late Polish composer and conductor Krzysztof Penderecki because he had learned the story of the Polish Brethren and related to how they valued religious tolerance and dialogue. Beside the estate, he established a school of music now maintained by the Polish Ministry of Culture, and the estate is maintained as a national park. Because Poland values Penderecki, his love for the Polish Brethren is honored and remembered. The tour led by the director of the music school reflected that spirit of love. At Ludinia, a similar estate with a manor house and a Polish Brethren chapel was purchased some 20 years ago and lovingly restored by Stanislaw Gizinski, a retired chemical engineer. Mr. Gizinski learned the story of the Polish Brethren and became a collector of their published works and accounts of their history. He assembled an exhibit of some of his collection just for us. It happens that a previous owner of his estate was Tadeusz Kosciuszko. the Polish engineer whom General George Washington hired in 1778 to design the fortifications of West Point. Mr. Gizinski has also collected artifacts related to him. His enthusiasm and love for both the Polish Brethren and Kosciuszko was evident, and I imagine his estate might also one day become a park. A different kind of love came across to us at Ublanek, where a Polish Brethren chapel has been converted into a private residence by Elżbieta Baran, a music teacher at the Municipal Cultural Center in nearby Lipnik, also a short drive from Raków. A small children's choir sang us greetings. The mayor of Lipnik also brought greetings, and we were treated to abundant food and drink. We held our Sunday service in Mrs. Barron's living room, and she let us tour the whole house, including her private bedroom in the attic. And were treated to a filling lunch of what else? Pierogies. Local press reported the event, lavishly praising the fine condition of the building. In his remarks, the mayor emphasized its cultural value and attractiveness to tourists. Every ally has his angle, or hers, and some allies seem unlikely. Great strides were made in historical scholarship about the Polish Brethren during the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s because the communist government saw in Raków's early practice of communal property a native historical precedent for communism. Raków abandoned its Christian communism rather quickly, but researchers got lots of financial support in the Cold War decades. Another more recent academic effort has recovered the hymns that the Polish Brethren sang. A hymnal with now archaic musical notation preserves both words and tunes together. A musical group at the university in Kraków, Kamerata Krakowia, is working on an edition of the hymnal with modern musical notation to make these accessible to people today. And we were treated by them to a performance of some 20 pieces from that hymnal. One fellow was playing a lute, another fellow was playing it's not a cello, it's the instrument that preceded it that looks like a cello. The viola gamba, thank you. Former cellist doesn't know this. And then there were two singers singing the hymns. Whatever their private motivations, whatever it is that first stirs their curiosity, good allies lift up their neighbors. I saw how our Warsaw hosts were lifted up by the interest that the Raków Historical Society and Penderecki's Music School and Mr. Gizinski and Mrs. Baron showed in their Polish Unitarian heritage. I saw a weight lift from them as they felt a little less isolated, a little less marginalized because of this interest and attention. And I knew that our presence, too, was having that effect. And we can do something like that for our marginalized neighbors here in Central Arkansas, too. By showing up and being curious and showing interest in their stories and culture and heritage. Nothing deepens our love of neighbors more than understanding And nothing makes that love more meaningful than the way it lifts them up and lets them feel seen. So may we be that kind of neighbors. Amen.
I invite Jeannie Brown back up to extinguish our chalice. Please join in saying our closing words, which are in the order of service. There you go. Go
Out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil.
Strengthen the
Faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.
And may we be good allies for all our marginalized neighbors.